We're streaming.
We are.
Okay. Welcome to the committee meeting of the Audit and Compliance Committee. As you can see, meetings of the CCH board and its committees are being held remotely until the end of the previously determined public health emergency. And that means, pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, any vote will require roll call votes. And with that, I think we're ready for the secretary to call the roll.
Director Deere?
Deere is here.
Director Guggenheim? Director Guggenheim, you're muted.
Present.
Thank you. Director Ryder?
Here.
And Chair Ketting?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay. In that case, the meeting can be called to order. The next regular meeting of the Audit and Compliance Committee is scheduled for Monday, October 24th at 9 a.m. First order of business will be public testimony. Secretary, do we have any public testimony?
No, we did not receive any.
Okay, then we will move to the next item of business, which is the board compliance training, which will be led by Nicole Almiro, our Chief Compliance and Privacy Officer. By way of introduction, I just want to say that several different regulatory agencies require that the board receive training to ensure that it's enabled to perform its duties with regard to compliance. In the past, we've asked the board to do the little self-training modules, but Nicole and I reviewed the modules and didn't think they were 100% relevant for the board. Sounds like I'm getting some echo. Is that your end or my end? Okay. Not 100% relevant for the board, and thought it might be more efficient and enable us to better target the training by just using a committee meeting to go through some of the required basics of things that we are required to make sure that the board is aware of in regards to its responsibilities in compliance. And I guess this exercise is kind of in the same vein as maybe going to church. It's not like you're going to learn something really new, but you will be reminded of things that you probably know, and perhaps you'll see them in a different perspective, and hopefully you will recommit to doing what it is you know you're supposed to do. And before I ask Nicole to start, I see that Joe Harrington is here and he should be recognized. Are there any other non-committee members present from the board?
Board Chair Taylor is also present.
Okay, make sure they're on the roll then. Sorry to skip that. Okay, Nicole, take it away.
Okay. Thank you, Director Ketting. Good afternoon, directors. Nicole Almiro, Chief Compliance and Privacy Officer here at CCH. As Director Ketting mentioned, we thought we'd provide this board education refresher on your board member responsibilities and an overview of our CCH compliance program. So today we'll review the board governance and oversight responsibilities. We'll review the CCH compliance program and provide an overview of the regulatory environment, answer any questions, and then we also have some additional educational resources we'll provide. Next slide, please. Okay, jumping right in. The fiduciary duties of board members are threefold. There's a duty of care, a duty of loyalty, and a duty of organizational respect. Next slide, please, Debbie. So for the duty of care, here we're really focusing on the process by which decisions are made. So you must exercise the same degree of care and prudence as you would in managing your own affairs. Reasonable inquiry is important because basically obligates you not to do business as usual, but to kick the tires, if you will, by asking relevant questions. And last, you should take sufficient time to deliberate before making decisions. Next slide, please. Duty of loyalty essentially requires board members to place the interests of the organization and its members ahead of their own interests. There's a requirement that you act in good faith and avoid self-interest. And here, a lot of boards as of late have gotten sideways with this self-interest. So we really want to disclose any potential conflicts. And then lastly, the duty of organizational respect. This is for nonprofit boards like ourselves, and it requires board members to advance the organization's mission and protect its assets. Next slide, please. So fiduciary duties of the board. I wanted to mention on the bottom left that the Caremark case is the pivotal case here, setting the standard of a duty in good faith to assure that there is a reporting system in place to keep you current and that this reporting system is working. Next slide. So for general board responsibilities, board members should establish a mission and value for the organization and ensure they are followed, act as stewards of the organization's human and financial resources, ensure compliance with organizational documents, establish long-range strategic plans, approve technological utilization that affect the organization's ability to fulfill its mission, and develop strategies and approve proposals for significant relationships. Next slide. And then for board responsibilities specifically related to compliance, board members should set the tone for and empower the compliance program, ensure the compliance program has adequate resources, establish formal lines for reporting, engage outside resources to evaluate the program like we did last year, stay current with the legal and regulatory environment, and we'll talk about this in a few slides, stay informed on the compliance program operations, meet regularly with the compliance officer, and consult with compliance subject matter experts as necessary. Thank you. So I thought this was a nice quote from the OIG on compliance oversight, mainly because of the last line. The board is to make compliance a responsibility for all levels of management, and that I think is key. Next slide, please, Debbie. So the OIG has stated that board involvement is essential, and I'll just highlight a few here. They say that the best boards are those that are active and questioning, and the boards should set the tone from the top, so a top-down approach. And as we mentioned, board involvement and commitment is critical for the success of the compliance program. Next slide, please. So the board's role is focused on governance, and that is direction and oversight of the organization, while management and leadership is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the organization and for reporting to the board. And I provided some examples to highlight the differences. On the left, the examples of board for the board members, for example, are preserving the mission of the organization, providing oversight and strategy with a focus on the big picture, and establishing the culture. Whereas on the right-hand side, examples of management could include selection and supervising staff to perform the day-to-day work, and developing and implementing the budget and keeping the board informed. Okay, moving on to the CCH compliance program. I'd like to give you an overview of the CCH compliance program. And the main purpose of the CCH compliance program and any compliance program is to prevent violations of laws, rules, regulation, and policy, detect violations as they happen, and correct any issues that could lead to future violations. The 7 boxes you see below are the 7 elements of an effective compliance program based on the federal sentencing guidelines and the OIG. CCH has all 7 elements of compliance program in their program. And that's not to say that we're done. Each year we strive to enhance each of the 7. This year we are focusing on developing compliance education videos to enhance our education and training requirement, and we'll share those when they're completed. Next slide.
I just want to note that if you were listening closely, you may have heard that Nicole cited as a source for some of this, the federal sentencing guidelines. That's not a miscitation. This is serious stuff. So it's important to remember that as we think about our role here.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Next slide, please, Debbie. Yep. Regulatory environment. Next slide. So we know that the healthcare regulatory environment is expanding and ever changing. This is just a snippet of the regulations that are at play. And I pulled the statistics for 2021 that I'd like to read here. The federal government won or negotiated over $5 billion in healthcare fraud judgments and settlements. 741 defendants were charged for their alleged participation in healthcare fraud schemes, and 312 defendants were convicted of healthcare fraud crimes. So it's easy to think that these 741 defendants are bad actors, but the rules are complicated and ever changing. So things that might have been acceptable 20 years ago might not be anymore. Next slide, please, Debbie. So the bulleted list are the laws and regulations that healthcare providers and plans must navigate. And the first three are the Fraud, Waste, and Abuse laws, their False Claims Act, the Anti-Kickback Statute, Stark, and Beneficiary Inducement. EMTALA, or the Anti-Patient Dumping Statute, and HIPAA, which includes both privacy and security. And we have research, study, and grant compliance. We have controlled substances to deal with, and professional and entity licensing requirements. So this is just an overview. Next time we'll do a part 2, and I'd like to get into the specific requirements of each and provide some examples. Next slide, please, Debbie. So before we get into questions, I just want to mention behind here we have reference materials that include links and suggested questions that I hope you find helpful. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Okay, hearing none, thank you. There will be a part 2, and we'll get into the regulations like I stated at maybe at our next meeting. Thank you very much.
I do want to give a little shout out for the educational material that's attached and some of the in particular some of the questions that they asked. Again, look, it's not as much fun as James Patterson perhaps, but it's really worth spending setting aside a little time and taking a look at that. You don't have to study it. There's no exam or anything. But some of these questions are, in fact, quite thought-provoking, and some of the attachments are useful. So I encourage people to take a look at that if they get a chance.
I have a question, Mike. I mean, how do we assess whether sufficient resources are applied to the compliance program? I mean, other than asking Nicole if she has what resources she needs.
I think
sufficient.
I'll let Nicole answer in a second. I will give you my answer in saying that last year we had an external consultant come in and look at our program, and the external consultant did raise some questions about the resource level. Some of those are being addressed as we address our general set of concerns about the speed at which hiring is done. So Nicole, do you want to add to that?
I would agree with you that was one of the purposes of having the external review come in and review our compliance program to see if it's adequately resourced, and they did opine on that, and I can share that report with you if you'd like again. But also there's national standards, and in addition, you could always ask me, and I would tell you my honest opinion as well. But those are the three avenues that you would look to make sure that your compliance program is adequately sourced.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Thank you very much.
Deborah, I assume you've noticed that Director Story has also joined us.
That is correct. He's
Brilliant.
the attendance.
Yep. Add him to the roll. Okay. The only action item we have today is to approve the minutes from the last meeting in June when we reviewed the external audit. These have already been accepted by the board. So this is merely an opportunity to make any changes, additions, corrections. And unless there are some, I will accept a motion to approve the minutes. Mary, would you like to approve, make a motion to approve the minutes?
Sure. Yes, I so
Good.
move.
And I suspect Bob Ryder would be happy to second it. And so can we have a roll call vote?
Roll call vote on the motion to accept the minutes. Aye or nay, Director Deere?
Deere is aye.
Thank you. Director Guggenheim?
Aye.
Thank you. Director Ryder?
Aye.
And Chair Ketting?
Aye.
You have four yays and no nays.
Okay. Now we're going to go to closed session, but in order to do that, we will need a motion. The motion will be made pursuant to the following exceptions to the Illinois Open Meetings Act. And those are 5 ILCS 120/2C 1 and 29. Will the secretary, do we have a motion first?
Yes, so move.
Okay, someone second?
Second.
Okay, Deborah, can you call the roll, please?
Roll call on the motion to go into closed session. Aye or nay, Director Deere?
Aye.
Director Guggenheim?
Aye.
Director Ryder?
Aye.
And Chair Ketting?
Aye.
You have 4 yays and 0 nays.
Okay, we'll see you all on the other side shortly.